Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In this video I'll continue working on my series of dolls inspired by Japanese mythology, and today we will be making a ghost from Japanese urban legend of Kuchisake onna, or the slit mouse woman. Her name comes from the deep cut she has across her face. Usually she's covering it with a mask or a fan and approaches her victims at night, asking if she's beautiful. If the victim says yes, she reveals her face and asks again, "How about now?" If they say yes, she would cut their face in the same manner. If they say no, just kill them. So basically, no matter what you reply, you are not getting away from her. Before I sculpt the most important part of her image, I needed to shrink her head to make it harder and more stable. I am always using the head shrinking technique from Chameleon Studio, and it always worked great for me. I would like to make her mouth slightly open, so first I need to separate her lower jaw from the rest of the skull. I sketched it with a pencil first and then cut it off with a saw. I did this off camera because I'm scared of the saw attachment, and when I work with it I try to be extremely careful, and having a camera in front of my face is not very helpful. I don't know if my saw attachment is actually capable of giving any serious injuries, but I kinda don't want to find out. After I was done cutting and carving, I decided to reroot her hair while I still had access to the inside of her head and could spread the glue easily. I rerooted two splits, one for ponytails and one for bangs. The legend of Kuchisake onna does not specify what outfit or haircut she is wearing, so I decided to dress her as a Lolita girl. I already made several dolls wearing traditional kimono styles, and now I want to go more into modern subcultures where it's possible, especially when it's a rather modern urban legend like this particular one. When Kuchisake onna approaches her victims, she would usually ask them if she is pretty, so I thought it would make perfect sense to dress her as one of the cutest and the most decorative subcultures there is. Ponytails is a very common Lolita hairstyle, and I chose them because I needed more volume on the upper part of her head to balance the mouth, and ponytails themselves will frame her face and help to highlight the smile even more. I always kept in mind that the main focus has to be on her mouth and the rest of the concept had to be built around it. Before I start sculpting, I protected her hair with plastic and stuffed her head with aluminium foil. Aluminium is very lightweight, so it always works perfectly as a filler material. Then I started sculpting the inside of the mouth, and I had to do it before gluing the jaw back, so I could still access everything. But because of that, I had to constantly keep checking if the bottom teeth were placed correctly and move them while I still could. In the end, I also sculpted her a tongue while also making sure that it does not intervene with the upper jaw. When everything seemed good enough, I also painted the mouth. Later I'll be adding blood to it, so it doesn't need to be painted super detailed yet, just enough to make sure that there is no unpainted spots left after I put everything together. And only then I could finally glue the bottom jaw back to her head, but the face mold is not done yet. You see, when we open our mouth, our muscles and skin stretch out, making our jaw look more narrow. I mean, considering that her muscles are cut and can't be stretched out anymore and her face would probably be very swollen, I could probably leave it how it is, but to me it still felt more natural if I narrow her face down and make more pronounced cheekbones as well. So I removed some vinyl with a knife and smoothed everything up with epoxy sculpt. And the next step will be correcting the shape of her lips and adding more detail to the wound itself. I struggled a bit with blending epoxy parts into vinyl because vinyl is way more difficult to sand and it's harder to spot imperfections because of the color difference. But overall, I think it turned out okay, and I really like how the wound turned out. Before starting the face up, I also sanded her body and covered it with plastic, so in the future I won't have to worry about damaging the face up with sandpaper. And now I can finally start working on the face up. Because of this project, I had to buy myself some new pastels that are suitable for working with skin tone, and this upgrade became possible thanks to my patrons. Every single donation I received from them went into these pastels I'm going to use in all of my future projects and doll videos. And every time I use these pastels, I'll be remembering how grateful I am for having such a wonderful support team. Thank you very much! Pan pastels have much better coverage than any other pastel brands I know, but there I still had to build up like 10 layers to blend Epoxy Sculpt and her original skin tone. I've been wondering if it would be better if I used acrylics and colored the epoxy pink first, but I would still have to thin them down and apply in several layers to avoid brush strokes, so I think here it wouldn't make that big of a difference. Except that I would save on MSC a bit. On her body I only needed 3 layers of pastels to get the color I needed though. So 10 layers later, epoxy was still shining through a little bit, but I decided to start the face up and add more pastels to the chin along the way. And while I'm working on the face up, we can talk a bit more about Kuchisake onna, who is she and how she ended up this way. What we can say for sure is that she is a ghost of a woman who was killed in a violent manner, but what exactly happened to her isn't clear. I found several versions of her story and I suggest we try look at it chronologically and see how it changed over time. Even though Kuchisake onna is an urban legend, the very first mentions of her date all the way back to the Edo period. A young man named Kosuke was returning home late in the evening and saw a young woman walking ahead of him. As it was raining, he offered her help and asked if she would like to share his umbrella, but as the woman turned to him, he saw that her mouth was cut from ear to ear. As she looked at him, he instantly aged and died. But that woman also had fangs and sparkly fox eyes, and the guy died of life drain, which is not a Kuchisake onna signature kill. So even though she looked similar to Kuchisake onna, it was a story about a kitsune creating illusions to hunt young men. However, it was the first mention of a woman with a slit mouth, and it could be that that story became an inspiration for another ghost story that tells about a beautiful woman who was a wife of a samurai. Some sources say she was unfaithful, and others say her husband was very jealous because of her beauty in general, but one day he decided to mutilate her face so she won't be able to attract anyone and slit her mouth from ear to ear. And that's why her ghost keeps asking people if she's beautiful or not, and then does the same thing that was done to her. The modern interpretation of her story became popular somewhere in the 80s, thanks to elementary school children teaching each other horror stories. It seemed to have something to do with school hours that changed in the late 70s, and a lot of kids started to return home from school later in the evening. Kids would tell each other how they saw a creepy woman in the dark wearing a mask. And that's also where the candy part came from. Some kids like to brag that they saw a Kuchisake onna and how they managed to get away by throwing candy at her as a distraction. And it has to be a specific type of hard candy as well, called Beko Ame. I heard about the candy part before, but couldn't understand how people came up with it and why candy is relevant, but knowing it was kids made it all make sense to me. What makes this story especially sweet is that it reminds me of the time when I was a child and we didn't have the internet yet, no phones and stuff like that. So my cousin and I would go to our older cousin and ask her to tell us horror stories. And she would just make up a new story out of thin air every time we went there. Now you know that creepypasta of my childhood was a teenage girl. And now that I think about it, I wish she wrote these stories down because they all were very creative and she really had the talent for storytelling. And also, thanks to her, my cousin and I were scared of the river behind our grandma's house because it was suspiciously similar to the river from one of our cousin's stories. So yes, kids have very strong imagination, I'll tell you that. The story of Kuchisake onna didn't stop there though. In the 90s, it got a new twist because of the rise of plastic surgeries. She got a new backstory where she is a victim of a bad plastic surgery, and because her surgeon used a lot of hair wax, now you could scare her away by repeating the word pomade. I think the pomade part is kinda silly, but plastic surgeries can be scary. But to me, it's mostly because of the psychological part of it, like it was in the movie Substance. If you guys watched it, or at least saw some clips from it, I think you will understand what I mean. This obsession with looks and fame became an inspiration for a lot of horror stories. Like, for example, there is another story I could recommend. It's called Beauty Water. Beauty Water is about a cosmetic product that allowed people to melt and reshape their face to look more attractive. And the main character there pushes it to the extreme with a lot of unexpected plot twists. I don't want to spoil it for you if you would like to watch it later, but yes, that story is a really good quality horror or thriller about the beauty industry. I don't think that plastic surgeries themselves are evil because originally they were created to help the victims of all kinds of accidents and disasters to restore their bodies and also get their confidence back. And I believe for these people it really could be a life-saving procedure, but when it became commercialized, it took a dark turn, especially with underground beauty businesses that have no quality control for anything. And no responsibility as well. I really would love to say that everyone is beautiful, just like everyone on the internet says it these days, but I think if somebody thinks they are ugly, they won't believe it no matter what I say. And from my own experience, I think it's really hard to gaslight yourself into believing that you are beautiful when deep inside you are sure that you are not. So what I found working for me is acceptance. Like, yes, maybe I am ugly, but so what? Or maybe tell yourself, yes, I look average, but so does 90% of the human population, because that's what the word average means, right? If everyone looked like a top model, they would be the average also. We're used to looking at celebrities on the red carpet, dressed by professional stylists with tons of makeup and wigs, professionally photographed with good lighting and Photoshop, but even they don't look like this every day of their life, because they are also people and they have flaws, just like everyone else. And if we just go outside to a grocery store, for example, we will see all sorts of average people just minding their business and living their lives, making friends, finding love without looking like Greek gods, you know? I think obsession with looks often comes from a simple desire to feel loved, and unfortunately, people who start changing themselves quickly realize that it's not helping. But they think that what they did is not enough, instead of understanding that they were on the wrong path all along. And that is the thing that really makes me sad for them, because all we need to be happy is just a bit of kindness that we can give each other for free. Okay, that was a nice talk, but let's get back to the doll. The face up is almost done. I only need to add some texture to the blood drips, and here I would like to try use UV resin. I finally invested into UV resin as well, and I got some dyes for resin, but unfortunately this set doesn't have a proper red color. So I'm mixing this oxidized red dye with a bit of orange to lighten it up, and then I apply it to her face with a toothpick. To add volume to the blood droplets, I applied resin in several layers, and I think it made the blood look very realistic. And after sealing the new skin tone, I can build her legs back together with an elastic. Now I need to cut her hair. I'd like to leave long strands on the sides and then cut her bangs. I also tried to cut it in an arch shape, but I wasn't a fan of it, so I changed it to the straight bangs with a little step on the sides, if it makes sense. I also cut the long strands a bit, but I kinda regretted that I cut them before curling because it would be easier to curl them while they were still long. I also cut her ponytails in a straight line, which is not good if you would like to change hairstyles, but for this concept I kinda wanted her hair to have a very clean cut. And here's what I got. I think she looks very cute with these curls, and the hair is framing her face exactly the way I wanted, so I'm happy with the results so far. Next up is her dress. Originally I wanted to use pastel colors like light blue, pink, and maybe some dark blue for the accents, but yeah, the concept changed many times again. For the bodice, I reused the pattern I made for my set clown doll, except I made the upper part of it out of lace this time. I had this embroidered mesh in my stock box, and I felt like the embroidery pattern could work perfectly for the cleavage. So I tried to put my pattern on it and play around, and it turned out to be exactly the shape I needed. So I made the main part of the bodice first out of normal satin fabric, put it on the doll, and only then attach the lace with a transparent thread. Sewing this element on the doll helped me make it more fitted, but also helped me see how it will actually look on the doll, and I could adjust its placement to make the lace pattern actually work with her body shape, like a tattoo basically. I didn't know how I'm going to finish the back yet, so I started to work on the skirt. For the skirt, I chose this embroidered elastic mesh because elastic mesh is softer and heavier, so I think in doll clothes it makes better folds than usual mesh. So I attached this mesh first and then added a layer of black fabric underneath as well. This color solution was inspired by a dress I saw from Valentino. I don't know why, but sunny weather always puts me in the sewing mood. Even though I really hate hot weather and bright light, there is something about this weather that makes me want to work with fabrics. So I moved from my usual camera setup to the natural light, at least for the sewing part. My best guess is that the sun reminds me of the days when I was going to a sewing class during summer holidays as a teenager. Back then I wanted to become a fashion designer, and I remember I was putting a lot of hopes into that class and was really happy to be there. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to make my own clothing, but I think at some point I'll move to making my own clothes. Or at least this year I decided to not buy any clothes for myself anymore, and who knows, maybe it will help motivate me to finally use some of the fabrics I've had laying around for years. At last, I need to add a button on the dress. I made a mistake somewhere in the allowances, so now the back of the dress would only overlap on the waist, and I could only put one button, but it was enough for me to close the dress and make it fit properly. So even though it was a mistake, I think it actually made the dress look better, because there's not so much bulk in the upper part of the bodice now. I would love to say that it was planned this way, but yeah, I have to be honest with you, and I think it's kind of cool to realize that making a mistake can actually improve your work. Sometimes. I decided to finish the back of the dress with just adding some of the same mesh I used on the bodice, but without embroidery, for it to be neutral and not intervene with the rest of the pattern. Then I also tried to add a black corset like it was on the Valentino dress, but I felt like it looked too rough compared to the very gentle bodice embroidery, so I scrapped it and replaced it with a normal satin ribbon. I think it looks much better now. Originally, I also planned to make her a pair of detachable sleeves, especially because I don't trust the blush on her joints, but all of the options I tried felt either too bulky or conflicting with the dress design, so I scrapped the sleeves also. But I made her a pair of mesh stockings to go with the dress though. I always struggle with making bows, and usually I would just tie them like shoelaces and then try to shape them properly, but this time I decided to finally do some research on bow tying. Did you understand anything from this short? I had to watch it a few times to understand what's going on there. So we first start with making a normal knot, and then we start working with the upper tail, bend it down, and what I found out as well is that if your ribbon is not double-sided, you need to bend it wrong side up. This is important. And then we fold it up, creating a loop, and fold this loop backwards. Like this we create a small loop for the knot itself. And then we just fold the second tail and pull this loop through the center. I honestly thought it will fall apart, but it worked nicely, especially for the first try. I should have looked up for this tutorial long ago, but I was too lazy. Then I additionally secured her ponytails with a thread because elastics like to dry out over time. I think vintage doll collectors out here will understand what I'm talking about, and then I added bows to the ponytails as well, now that I know how to make proper bows. As for the shoes, I decided to use original Draculaura shoes, but paint them black and add some metallic accents to make them look more detailed. And of course I messed up some parts, but I'll correct it later with black paint. let's put them on and check out the end result pictures. To finish the look, I got her a scissors-shaped charm because I think in the most iconic descriptions of Kuchisake onna, she used scissors to attack her victims. After the doll was done, I realized that I accidentally merged the image of Kuchisake onna and Draculaura, the base doll I used in this project, and to me she looks more like Draculaura with a creepy twist now, probably because of the ponytails. But anyway, let me know what you think about this doll in the comments section, and if you like this video, don't forget to click the like button. It will make me happy and help my channel grow. Any engagement is highly appreciated. And if you would like to support my channel further, you can also join my Patreon for more in-depth content or buy me a coffee. All of the links you can find in the description box. Even though I started Patreon now, my giveaway offer for buy me a coffee still stands. For every 100 coffees I reach, I'll make a giveaway and the winner will get a custom doll commission. Each coffee equals 1 entry. Thank you very much for spending your time with me today, and I hope to see you soon in my next video. Bye!